What's up? I'm B and welcome to my channel. I am officially back in my old office. We are moving, getting things as back to normal as we possibly can now that Monks and Beans have been moved and Rick is feeling a little bit better from his surgery. So it's been interesting. You'll notice I don't have a background. I'm working on it, but those curtain lights are a big task to move, so it might take a while. It's going to be a little bit plain, but I think we'll be able to get past it. On my channel, we debunk harmful personal development and religious norms, and today I'm doing a follow-up on a topic that I've already spoken about and feel great passion and rage for, and that is the topic of Pastor Mark Driscoll.
I do love you. I am furious with some men. And I believe that fury is God's. You are not cute, and he is not pleased. And time is short. Father God, I pray.
I don't know why I want that on a t-shirt. You are not cute, and he is not pleased. Does the phrase, she believes she could, so she freaking did, baby, ring a bell here? Yeah, hi, I have merch. I feel awkward. I'm not used to promoting myself. I barely even promo my own videos on Instagram, but I am really excited to announce that I do have merch. I am wearing the Mars collection right now. It says you are not cute and he is not pleased, but if you are face to face with me, you can see that the words not in both of those lines is crossed out. So it reads, you are cute and he is pleased. I also have two other collections that are on represent.com. I ended up going with Represent because I've ordered merch from other creators through their website before, and their customer service is just really great. The quality of the clothing is awesome, and I figured, I hope that if somebody decides to order and they have an issue, I hope that doesn't happen, but on the off chance that that happens, if I'm not going to be the one controlling distribution, refunds, all of that, I want a really great customer service team. And, on one of the pieces I ordered, I got a sweatshirt. It had like a little spot on it, and it wasn't huge, but I was just like, what if this doesn't come out in the wash? And so I emailed customer service and they sent me another one. They asked for pictures. I sent them. They were like, yeah, that's gross. And they sent me a brand new sweatshirt, no charge, like super fast it got here. And it was just a really great experience. So I was like, let's go with somebody who I know is going to take care of the people who watch my channel. So like I said, I have the Mars collection. I also have the Face East collection and the Celebration collection. So you can see pictures of those right here. I am kind of obsessed. I love all of the pieces, and if you are interested in getting yourself or somebody you know any of them, you can click the links in my description box. Of course, as always, no pressure. This is just something that I really think is fun, and I had such a fun time designing everything. If you go to my store on their website, you will see kind of the inspiration and the story behind each of the collections, and they're all meaningful to me and I feel like us as a community, and they're also really fun and cute, in my opinion. The t-shirts, they are all Next Level brand. It is an amazing brand of t-shirt. They are the only ones that my husband wears. All of the sweatshirts are super comfy, cozy. It's great. It's a lot of fun. I'm excited to announce it, and if you end up getting something, I want to see it, and I cannot wait to see all of your pictures of you in Bikini merch. What the heck? That's wild. Okay, I'm done. Back to the video. Now, we've talked about him before. I have a lot of thoughts and opinions, but how I got introduced to the topic of him, his church, kind of everything that happened with Mars Hill was through a podcast on Christianity Today called The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill. And I thought that that was really interesting. They covered a lot of ground, but there's even more to be discovered. It's like that was the tip of the iceberg. We're going to cover a few additional topics. There are multiple blogs, podcasts, forms of media content that dive even deeper into both Mark Driscoll, his tactics, Mars Hill, and Trinity Church in Scottsdale, which he founded a few years ago after he was given, a very kind, in my opinion, reprimanding, a letter saying, here are the issues, here's how we'd like to fix them, and we want to move forward. We want to lovingly restore you to leadership. Let's work on it. He quit. He left, and he moved to Arizona, which is great for us. I love that. And he started a church. And things have not changed. His tactics have not changed. If anything, I'd say they've gotten worse, but I don't know the extent of how horrible things were at Mars Hill, so maybe they're the same. I don't know. All of the things that we will be talking about today, I feel like could fall under the category of, you read this?
The Reynolds pamphlet. Have you read this?
We're going to be talking about legal funds, William Wallace, creepy surveillance tactics, and the structure of Trinity Church. And while we are doing that, I'll be drinking this big old Truly, and after I will be recording another video, a bonus video for the week, if you will, reacting to some interesting Christian TikToks. That one's just going to be like a funny thing. We gotta have some lighthearted fun every now and then on this channel, and tonight's the night to do it. So the first thing, the legal fund. Previously, Mark Driscoll had been accused of misappropriating hundreds of thousands, if not millions, and I'm going to be very vague and broad in this accusation because legally nothing came from it, but there was definitely a lot of talk, misappropriating a lot of money that had been donated as tithes for personal gain. And recently, this was a few months ago in June of this year, Chad Freeze, who is a previous member of Mars Hill's security staff, mentioned Driscoll claimed to have tripled his litigation fund to approximately $10 million, which naturally invites a question as to why Driscoll would have one, revisiting that civil RICO suit. So there's this website called deardriscoll.com, and it's obviously run by Chad Freeze, as you can see right here. And I'll just read the abstract to you, and then let's get into the legal fund issue. So the abstract says, my family attended the Trinity Church for nearly 3 years, and my wife attended Mars Hill several years ago. I served as the director of security for only 7 weeks, February 27th to April 18th of 2021. Until I resigned due to the pastor's immoral, unethical, and unbiblical actions. I did not see these issues until I became part of the inner circle, where I attended meetings and participated in top-secret conversations. I acknowledge I was complicit in executing the duties of my position. I did not get fired, nor was I kicked out of the church as others have been. I could not continue down the same path as the leadership of the church, as that is not who I am, nor who God called me to be. Many of you reading this have read other articles released this past month. I have had people reach out saying those things are not valid and the stories are one-sided. These folks were not part of the meetings or conversations I described below. I directly witnessed these things happen, participated in meetings and discussions, or validated information others shared with me. For those that seek truth, I encourage you to read with an open mind. This article is lengthy, so I linked a table of contents below to help navigate. I have also included as many emails and messages as possible in an attempt to show this is not hearsay. I encourage you to read them as they help paint the full picture. Feel free to reach out with questions or clarification. So we're gonna scoop right on down to threatens to sue and bankrupt people. Chad writes, in another Angelo security meeting, you and Brandon discussed how you had tripled your litigation fund to approximately $10 million. You said something along the lines of, if Angelo crosses me, I will just bankrupt him. It is a numbers game. I guarantee you he runs out of money before I do. And this Angelo security meeting, we'll get to it. Yeah, you're not going to want to miss that part. Chad goes on to say, you followed that up with, in fact, that goes for anyone. You continue to talk horribly about Angelo. Oh, and I probably should have put this in the beginning. There's going to be some language used in this video. And normally, if you watch my channel, you know I would bleep it out. I would kind of modify it so as to not have swearing, vulgar language, stuff like that. but I think it's important to leave it in here exactly as it was written and or said, because I want you to fully imagine, if you are a Christian, hearing your pastor speak this way. And not just like, oh, we were at like a football game and he was cursing when he got really excited or frustrated with one of the plays, or we were having a cigar night and he wasn't acting in a professional capacity. He was just hanging out with his friends. And so, there's times when certain language is appropriate. I am not saying that Christians, pastors, whoever, shouldn't swear. Lord knows I have a very versatile vocabulary, I'll put it that way. But when you are acting in a professional capacity as a pastor and you're speaking like this, it's very concerning. Driscoll says, hell, he's a broke-ass dad that could not financially take care of his son. He only tithes $25 per month. He doesn't have much money, so bankrupting him will be easy. Chad goes on to say, how is this pastoral? How is this Christ-like? How is this loving? And then we're going to read the Randall Taylor section because part of that is going to come into play later, so it's just good to have the context. Over Easter weekend, Randall was talking with me about family. He was sharing stories with me about his family, and I was sharing about mine. Randall proceeded to tell me that his daughter is about to graduate from law school, and how he has spent a few days with her at her apartment a week or so prior. Randall told me about a legal system she has access to as a law student and how he used it to look up all kinds of dirt on Angelo. I played it off and asked about what all he had access to, and he said, you can pretty much pull up anything you want about anyone. I would love to see those access logs from her account. Identity and access management is a core security principle, not to mention legal, moral, and ethical concerns. Mark, is this the kind of wise counsel you want? Maybe so. This was shocking to me, and I remember this conversation a few weeks later when Pastor Darian told our chaplaincy class that Trinity has a team to monitor our social media posts and who we were connected with on different social media platforms. Was he talking about Randall's? In another meeting I had with you, we discussed cybersecurity concerns, and when I asked about social media analysis, you mentioned Randall Taylor has it all under control. Now, I do think there's something to be said for conducting yourself in an appropriate way depending on your job. If there's people on staff who are, going to clubs every weekend, posting pictures of them drunk or like doing drugs, partying super hard, it's probably not going to be the best look. You're not going to want them to just publicly display that on an account where people in the church can find it. So I get that. But when you are talking about going to the extent of doing something illegal, illegally accessing information on people that you don't like because you're trying to keep tabs on them, that's sketchy. When you have a team that is monitoring your staff's social media posts and connections across multiple platforms, that's sketchy. And when they say monitoring connections, they're talking about keeping an eye on who you are friends with. As in, if we have excommunicated somebody from our church and we see you with them on Easter weekend going to brunch, or we see that you commented on one of their posts, that's an issue. You're going to get moved down a little bit on this sliding scale of trust that Mark Driscoll has. And he rates people on how much he trusts them on it. It's wild. So we have a pastor here who is not shy about threatening lawsuits, who says he has $10 million saved up should he need it, and he's willing to use it, and he's actually going to revel in it because it shouldn't have crossed Pastor Mark Driscoll. Next, we are going to talk about William Wallace. In the early 2000s, Mars Hill, the church that Mark Driscoll used to be the pastor of, had an unmoderated discussion platform called Midrash. Now, members of the church posted on this, random people posted on it, you could be anonymous. You could talk about basically whatever you wanted, and there was nobody there to rein things in if they got a little bit out of hand. On one hand, I can see how you wouldn't want somebody coming in and trying to control how people shared their thoughts or feelings, but at the same time, not having any sort of moderation just led to chaos. It just led to bad choices being made. So Mark Driscoll thought that it would be a brilliant idea to pose as someone named William Wallace II. And in his book, Confessions of a Reformation Rev, he explained it like this. At this time, our church also started an unmoderated discussion board on our website called Midrash, and it was being inundated with postings by emerging church-type feminists and liberals. I went onto the site and posted as William Wallace II, after the great Scottish man portrayed in the movie Braveheart, and attacked those who were posting. Your pastor goes on to this discussion board and decides to attack those who are posting for being liberal and feminist. Okay. It got insane, and thousands of posts were being made each day until it was discovered that it was me raging like a madman under the guise of a movie character. One guy got so mad that he actually showed up at my house to fight me one night at 3 a.m. Things were starting to get out of hand with the men, so I called a meeting and demanded that all the men in the church attend. And I'm not going to go through all of the postings, although I will link down below if you want to go through the hundreds of pages of comments below this post. It's a lot, and some of it is redundant, but some of it is incredibly hateful. But I'm just going to read to you the main post that he first put on this website under the alias of William Wallace II. What kind of sane pastor does this? I don't know. What kind of healthy pastor does this? Because I don't think Mark Driscoll's crazy. I shouldn't have said sane. He's not crazy. He's narcissistic, power hungry, mean. He is a lot of negative things. What healthy pastor does this? And you know me, I don't think anybody's perfect. Nobody has to be perfect to be a leader or to be somebody that you can look up to and admire. But it's important that they're not toxic, and Mark Driscoll is. It's just so wild to me. This is from December 5th, 2000. This is from the year 2000. It's just wild to me that this is how long this has gone on, and he still has a church. He still has people who follow him. Mark Driscoll, as William Wallace II, says, "We live in a completely pussified nation. We could get every man, real man, as opposed to pussified James Dobson, knockoff crying, promise-keeping, homoerotic, worship-loving, mama's boy, sensitive, emasculated, neutered, exact male replica, evangelifish, and have a conference in a phone booth. It all began with Adam, the first of the pussified nation, who kept his mouth shut and watched everything fall headlong down with the slippery side of hell/feminism. When he shut his mouth and listened to his wife, who thought Satan was a good theologian when he should have led her, and exercised his delegated authority as king of the planet." This doesn't even make sense. As a result, he was cursed for listening to his wife, and every man since has been his pussified, sit quietly by and watch a nation of men raised by bitter, penis-envying, burned, feministed, single mothers who make sure that Johnny grows up to be a very nice woman who sits down to pee. So, Johnny hits youth group one day to hear from his pussified youth pastor. Oh, by the way, Mark Driscoll doesn't think that adult men should work with kids, but I also know that he doesn't love putting women in power, so if you're going to have a female children's pastor, she's going to have some kind of authority, but women aren't really worthy of that in Mark Driscoll's eyes. But at the same time, if you're a man who works with kids, you're a pussy. So we'll wrestle with that one later. So Johnny hits youth group one day to hear from his pussified youth pastor that he should perfect his virginity and dating skills. So Johnny tries to be a loving and patient man who looks for a nice woman like Mom, who will whip him into shape and beat him into submission, so that he can one day join a men's accountability group and learn how to keep his urges under control, which just causes him to earn a BA in masturbation, MA in porno, and PhD in knuckleheadology, as Johnny is now terrified of women and his own penis. As Johnny is now so terrified of women and his own penis that he sits in his room alone each night on the internet hoping to get some, with the occasional falling into sin with a woman as they inevitably cross boundaries of intimacy. Because he's so afraid of women and has no idea how to take one, or love one, or serve one, or take one to bed and make the Song of Songs sing again. One day, Johnny finally gives into the pressure of his pre-Humpers singles ministry and gets stuck with some gal left on the shelf long after her expiration date that is just like dear old mom who wants him to shut up like Adam, take his beating, and join a church men's group that is really a woman's group in disguise, complete with cookies and crying and antidepressants to cope with the insanity. It's really disheartening to me to hear a leader speak as if men addressing their feelings and like expressing them in a healthy way and taking care of their mental health is a weak thing to do, or a female thing to do, because, you know, weakness and females, they go hand in hand, right? Poor Johnny is by now so completely whacked that he's afraid of having kids and hold off his taking on any more responsibility as long as he can, because Johnny is a boy trapped in a man's body walking around in a world full of other boys all trying to keep their PP behind their zipper and do just like their mama told them and be good women. And so the culture and families and churches sprint to hell because the men aren't doing their job, and the feminists continue their rant that it's all our fault and we should just let them be pastors and heads of homes and run the show. And the more we do, the more hell looks like a good place, because at least a man is in charge, has a bit of order, and lets men spit and scratch as needed. And all their whining and fighting is nothing more than further evidence that we are still kings, and unless we do our job, everyone and everything is getting screwed, except Johnny, metaphorically speaking, of course. A man showing up at your house at 3 a.m. to fight you because of that post and the subsequent conversations that happened under it, I understand it. I'm not saying that I would approve of that. I'm not saying I would encourage somebody to go fight their pastor in the middle of the night, but you can understand why this conversation would elicit such an intense reaction in somebody. And again, I'm not going to read all of the comments, but Driscoll, as William Wallace, goes on to say how he's going to create his own dictionary so that, you know, everybody here who agrees with me, we can all speak the same language without people getting their panties in a bind. A few examples. Pussified. Any man who has lost his rocks and completed the process of remaining biologically male but becoming female in all other ways. Feman. A woman who thinks and acts like a man because she believes it makes her equal to men. Whacker, a man who is a porno freak and chronic masturbator. Manly men. Any regenerate man who loves God and his neighbor and demonstrates it with grace-guided practical living and righteous theology. Yeah, this sounds like you love your neighbor, Mark. You're a manly man. You're a real man. This sounds like you're just such a kind and loving person, and you believe in God and all of the teachings of the Bible, and you just want to spread the good news. That's why you speak like this. I don't really think those two things are matching up, but okay. Rock free. Any man who attends a church with a woman pastor. Mixed nuts. Any man who claims Christ but is actively involved in homosexual activity. Three more. Okay, we'll do 3. Homoerotic huddle. Any men's group where the men cry inordinately and hug each other with deep affection. Feminism. The enemy of every man, every woman, every child, and God Almighty. Marty Stewart. Any man who stays at home with his kids while his wife goes off to work to provide for his family. And as Matthew Paul Turner writes right below that, and that is just part of the 140-page conversation that you can read here, and warning, it's a mouthful. That will be linked below if you are interested. So now we're going to move on to the surveillance part of this story. There was a couple named Catherine and Angelo Manuele who attended Trinity Church in Scottsdale with their 2 teenage sons. They were super involved, really enjoyed going there. They were looking for a place that was open during COVID, and so they found Trinity Church. Seemed like a great fit. Trinity has this student intern program for kids in their like preteens to teenage years up until like 17. Their son, who was 15, became a student intern. And You probably know this, or it makes sense to you that when you are involved in student ministry or as an intern, when you volunteer, you get kind of close to the people who are in the inner circle of a church. And, that's what happened. The 15-year-old son of the Manuels became very close with Pastor Mark Driscoll's 17-year-old daughter. They were warned against having romantic encounters. They were told to just remain friends. And when that didn't happen, the relationship progressed a little bit. The 15-year-old son kissed the 17-year-old daughter of Pastor Mark Driscoll and was subsequently pulled out of a church activity and into another pastor's locked office where he was interrogated about the kiss. When he admitted to it, he was told to get his stuff and leave. And he went out to the car where his dad was waiting, and they were informed that they were not going to be allowed to attend the men's meeting that very same night, and they were escorted off of the property by multiple security guards. But that's not all. I'm going to read to you from a website called julieroys.com. Julie has been covering not only Mark Driscoll, but a lot of other really harmful things in organized religion. She has obviously her website and a podcast. It's really good. I would highly recommend it. Let's read what she wrote about this series of incidents. So after the kiss, the church then pressured other families to shun the Manuels, the couple says, and even filed charges with police against the Manuels for threatening communication. The Manuels say they have threatened no one. Trinity's former head of security, Chad Freeze, we were just on his website a little bit ago, a cybersecurity expert and former Marine, said Trinity hired a private investigator to surveil the Manuel family 24/7. He says teams, including pastors, tracked the Manuels as they went to local shops and businesses, even their own neighborhood. According to Freeze and other former staff and volunteers at the church, what happened to the Manuels is just the tip of the iceberg. They say the church has an army of security to protect not just the church, but the entire Driscoll family who are treated like royalty. Freeze says there's nowhere on Trinity's campus where people are not being audio and video recorded, and to serve as a volunteer, one must sign a non-disclosure agreement pledging to protect the confidentiality of all information about the church's business, operations, staff, volunteers, and guests. Get this, though! The church also maintains a BOLO list, Freeze said, with names, pictures, and sometimes personal vehicles of people the church has banned from its property. The list contains one VIP, Randall Taylor. Does that name sound familiar? Randall Taylor, the same man who used his daughter's access to a particular website to look up personal information on people that he didn't like. He's the VIP, a man from out of state who allegedly provides wise counsel for Trinity. So let's backtrack a little bit. Remember how I said when Mark Driscoll realized there was like a budding romance going on, he called a meeting and said like, hey, nah, this needs to kind of be cut off right at the head. After that meeting, which included Mark Driscoll, the son, and Angelo Manuele, the father, the son said, after the meeting with Driscoll, John Welnick, Driscoll's assistant, sent a text saying, I know that wasn't easy, but neither is trying to marry one of PMD's kids, Pastor Mark Driscoll's kids. Remember that from here on out, you have a microscope on you. Not just from PMD, but from everyone, and I mean everyone. Be a man and land the plane. An adult texting that to a 15-year-old. Vince added that Landon Chase, a pastor at Trinity who's married to another Driscoll daughter, repeatedly congratulated Vince for, quote, landing a Driscoll, and constantly gave him advice on how to be a man for Driscoll's daughter. Despite the warning and advice, Vince said he and Driscoll's daughter did kiss, and somehow Driscoll found out. On the evening of Wednesday, March 24th, Vince said he was pulled out of a band rehearsal by Pastor Anderson. Vince said Anderson took him upstairs into his locked office and began angrily grilling Vince about his relationship with Driscoll's 17-year-old daughter. Vince said Anderson first asked if Vince had done anything unbiblical with Driscoll's daughter. Vince said he was surprised by the question and replied no. Then Anderson reportedly asked Vince if he had made out with Driscoll's daughter. Vince said he felt awkward and intimidated because, yeah, you're in a locked office with an adult and you are 15 years old being interrogated about your romantic relationships and your physical intimacy level, which is 1000% inappropriate, not okay. Like, this should not ever happen. Not only the content of the conversation, but purely the fact of an adult pastor being in a locked room with a 15-year-old mind. Like, this is not okay. This should not happen. There should be safety guidelines prohibiting this from ever happening within a church. Like, this is just not okay. But yeah, so Vince said he felt awkward and intimidated because he had never talked to an adult about such private things, let alone a pastor he didn't know well, yet Vince said he answered yes. Vince said Anderson then stood up, pointed at Vince, and ordered him to get his stuff and get out. My whole world just fell apart at that moment, Vince said, adding that he recognized he would probably never talk to Driscoll's daughter again. Vince said he also feared he might not be allowed to return to Trinity, given some of his prior experiences at the church. Angelo said Vince then came out of the building crying and got in Angelo's car, which was parked in the church lot. Angelo said while the two were sitting in the car, Anderson called and told Angelo and Vince that they needed to sit out a men's meeting that night. Angelo was offended and said he pushed back, but Anderson was adamant. Then, he said, things got crazy. 4 to 5 security volunteers gathered in the parking lot near Angelo's car. Rather than make a scene, Angelo said he drove away. On the way home, a security volunteer texted Angelo asking what was going on. Angelo asked what he meant, and the next morning the volunteer responded, "I was told that you are not allowed on the property for a men's group tonight," and I was like, what the hell? And we have a screenshot of that text. Angelo was also notified that he'd been placed on the BOLO list, and there he is, like, literally with the eggs, like, he cannot be on campus because his 15-year-old kissed my 17-year-old. How wild is that to you? And it literally says who, Angelo Manuele, what, the Trinity Church is no longer fellowshipping with him. If he arrives on property, he will be trespassed on site. When? Anytime. Where? TTC property. Why? NA. No, tell us, Mark, why? Why? How? Report to pastor or staff member, and then it gives details of his vehicles. And so there's a lot of additional things that happen, like small little communications. The son sent an email to Mark Driscoll's daughter talking about how God will heal the brokenhearted. Mark responded and told him never to contact his daughter again. Like, all these little things that basically the overarching theme is, you're not one of us anymore. I'm not talking to you as Mark Driscoll. I'm not talking to you, and none of my staff is going to either. No one on this church campus is going to either, because you've lost that right. You're done. Another example is where a woman named Jill Glennie, a longtime friend of Catherine Manuele, whose husband serves on Trinity's security team, texted Catherine and said, "Hi, Catherine, I've been praying a lot on how to respond. Because of the choices and decisions you all have decided to make, we can no longer remain friends. I wish you well." And Catherine, the 15-year-old's mom, says, "Can I ask you what choices I have made? Is this Jill or Caleb texting? I'm sorry, but I'm so confused. I have no idea what choices I have made that have hurt you." And as a bonus, the family was served a trespass warning by Scottsdale Police Department. Something really interesting that, like, if you are as obsessed with this as I am, that you might want to consider looking into, on this website, there's screenshots of texts from this 24/7 security team that was hired to follow the Manuels, and it's wild, especially if you live in Arizona, because it's like, oh, he's getting off on Happy Valley, he's on the I-17, like, they are literally tracking his moves, and they are communicating as a team about where this man is. This man who, what? He has a kid who was attracted to Pastor Mark Driscoll's daughter. Like, that's it. That is what this man has done. And you've banned him from your church. You are cutting him off from his friends, from his community, and you are tailing him 24/7 to make sure he does not come back on campus. That is wild to me. And I'm not saying that there shouldn't be like a security list of, hey, these people are security risks, so here's how we need to deal with them, because yeah, like that's a logical thing of understanding who might pose a physical threat to somebody under a particular situation, or somebody who is just a dangerous person and needs to be observed or dealt with a little bit differently than the general public. Most churches, I mean, at least in Arizona, bigger churches will have armed security staff. That's not surprising to me. That's something I've seen for a very long time. So having a security list or protocol isn't stunning to me, but the little things that will get people put on this BOLO list is absolutely wild. Okay, and the final topic of conversation is going to be church oversight, and I have an expert opinion from somebody who I know who they have a career in ministry, so we'll get to those texts in a little bit, but this is still on Julie Roy's website. According to Angelo and Catherine Manuel's son, Joey Manuel, a former paid intern at Trinity, Driscoll, this is not the son that kissed Mark Driscoll's daughter. This is their other son. Driscoll tells staff that he intentionally structured Trinity to avoid the problems he encountered at Mars Hill. Apparently, this means eliminating any meaningful oversight. An organizational chart provided by Joey Manuel shows that everyone at Trinity reports to Mark Driscoll and his wife, Grace, even wise counsel, Randall. Randall Taylor, who's a chief strategist at a leading Christian marketing firm, Dunham & Company, is one of only 2 directors other than Driscoll named on the church's articles of incorporation. The other director is Jimmy Evans, a former pastor at Gateway Church and founder of Marriage Today, where Driscoll is listed as a team member. Evans does not appear anywhere on Trinity's organizational chart. The chart mentions a board, but there's no board listed on Trinity's website. Similarly, former staff members say they don't know of any board. The Roy's report reached out to both Evans and Taylor seeking comment and clarity about their role at Trinity, but neither responded. And here's just kind of a bonus. Joey Manuel said that the church doesn't publish a budget or financial statements, and no staff know Driscoll's salary. He added that Driscoll instructs staff to tell people who inquire about church finances that it's none of their business. Okay, so 2 things here. Most nonprofits do have to engage in financial reporting. Because of the United States tax system, churches, while they are considered nonprofit, are religious organizations, obviously, and so they do not have to provide that information, technically. But I will say that it is extremely concerning if your church is not willing to do that. If you are a member of a church, of an organization like this, you should have the right to request and be given that documentation. And when I first saw this, I thought, okay, maybe Mark Driscoll is just talking out of his butt. Like maybe he's saying like, oh, it's none of your business, but maybe I can find that documentation or just like a little bit of information about what their budget looks like. No, there's nothing. And kind of the really concerning part of this is that when a nonprofit reports their budget and their earnings, they file something called a 990 form to the IRS, which breaks that down. I found a website where Trinity Church claims that it does file a 990 form, but I cannot find it anywhere. I'm not super versed in like tax law, financial reporting. Like I don't know where to look for those specific things, but I've Googled it. I've tried to find it. Maybe I just don't have the right account or the right access, but it's nowhere to be found. So it's very interesting to me that on one website, they would claim, yes, we do file this, but I can't find any record of what it looks like, of what their budget is, of how much they take in tithes, how much they spend on community outreach or programs to help people, like how much of this goes towards salary. What does the budget look like? Where is your money going? If you are looking to attend a healthy church, they should be willing to give you that information. And so the second thing I wanted to address in the section that we just read was the church structure, that the staff does not know of any sort of board that has a say in how the church operates or that a pastor would report to. So I'm going to go sideways so we can take a real good look at this. This is from wthrockmorton.com. And you can see right here at the very top, it says, the ministry of Trinity Church is ruled by God, influenced by wise counsel, governed by a board, led by the senior pastor, run by staff, and carried out by Team Trinity. What board is that? Nobody on staff knows who the board is, and wise counsel is Randall, who has engaged in very sketchy behavior, and like Mark Driscoll is at the very top. He doesn't even report to him. Randall is under Mark. So we have senior pastor, Pastor Mark, and Grace. And then we have the campus and the campus pastor, the worship pastor, life groups, all of that. On the other side, we have preaching, associate pastor, production director, video director, communications director, all that great. And then directly under Mark, we've got real faith director Ashley, wise counsel Randall, and executive assistant Molly. Under them, we have contractors, services, and platforms. That seems very odd that Mark Driscoll would be at the very top, especially considering the kind of totalitarian leadership he exerted at Mars Hill. The fact that there is nobody above him on this little diagram that we have makes me feel a certain kind of way. And so I texted, like I said, somebody I know who their profession is in ministry. And I'm gonna like blur out some things because they're personally identifying. But I reached out. Let me tell you what this person said. So I told this person, I'm going to send you a printout of a church's leadership layout. You'll notice the person at the very top is the senior pastor and his wife. The senior pastor does not report to / isn't held accountable to any other person or body. Does that seem right to you? And obviously I didn't mention who it was. In my head, I'm like, maybe he's going to see that and know who this is about or like what church this is for. Maybe he'll be familiar with the story, but maybe not. Let me just put this out there and see what his unbiased opinion is. He responds by saying, it just depends on how the church operates, but here's my opinion. First, is the wife on paid staff? If so, what is her role? If not, she should not be on the org chart. It sends a signal that she has power over staff even though she isn't on staff. I've seen this before and it's not healthy. Second, ours has redacted, who is the executive pastor at the church that he works at, on top, and then Jesus Christ above him, but that's just because our org chart only includes paid staff. Pastor reports to our executive board, but that's not reflected on the org chart because they aren't paid and ultimately no one else reports to them. Third, the size of the church matters because of the responsibility. When I worked at a small church, it looked similar minus the wife part. All the other staff reported to the senior pastor and he reported to the board, but the org chart didn't show that. Finally, the sentence at the very top does mention a council and board, but it would just depend on how this senior pastor operates those. Are they a bunch of his friends? Are they all involved in the church? Are they just a bunch of yes people who only agree with the senior pastor? I said, good questions. So the wife is on the staff page, but it says she leads the women's life groups. I feel like that should go under the campus section where the other life group leader is located. Secondly, the church states it has a board of directors, but no one on staff knows exactly who they are, and the church does not have a board of elders. The senior pastor, according to former staff, has said that he doesn't need elders and that he will only seek wise counsel from one person, Randall on the chart, who is his friend. It's interesting to hear, though, that just because a particular group isn't listed on docs like that doesn't mean they don't exist, just that they may not be included due to not being official staff. And he said, yeah, wife should not be listed next to him on the org chart. That is just old church shit that bugs me. Does that mean she also has authority over the staff? Just a bad look. Yeah, I've seen it done both ways. Most churches will list the senior pastor reporting to the board even though they aren't paid staff, and some don't list them because they only have paid staff in their chart. It all depends on the culture of the church and staff. This org chart and what you told me gives me the senior pastor has all the power kind of vibes, and that's a slippery slope to be on. Here's where it gets good though, because I'm like, okay, this makes sense. That org chart in and of itself might not be a huge red flag because you never know, are they only including paid staff? Are they going to include volunteers? It varies church to church, but there are some things that are a little bit concerning. And so I got the answers that I needed, and I just said, well, get a load of this. And I told him about the 15-year-old and 17-year-old and what happened from all of that. And at the end I said, that has nothing to do with the questions I asked you, just wanted to share the insanity, LOL. And he said, I had a feeling this was Driscoll. You should have just led with that, LOL. That dude is a certified asshole. His church is like a cult. Literally everything wrong with the American church is part of Trinity. Have you listened to the podcast about it yet? And I responded being like, well, I wanted your opinion without knowing who it was. Like, I wanted it to be unbiased, but yes. And I explained that I've found all of these other resources with information on Driscoll. And his response was, yeah, the structure he created was unhealthy from the beginning. And unfortunately, that is pretty common. He craved power and knew how to abuse it. Org chart in and of itself, not necessarily something to be ultra concerned about depending on your church culture, but in the case of Mark Driscoll, it is concerning, especially because nobody on staff knows what this board is. There is no board of elders. They say they have a board of directors that Mark engages with, but nobody has ever met them or heard about them or knows who they are. And it's just funny to me that another pastor at a church would be like, oh, you're talking about Driscoll. He's everything that's wrong with the American church. So thank you to my friend for giving me the expert opinion of somebody who works in ministry. And going forward, I feel like we're going to have a lot more conversations about Mark Driscoll. His actions are not okay. This man has clearly not learned from the mistakes, quote unquote, that he made at Mars Hill. He does not care. The former board of elders who wrote him that restoration plan, when they found out he planted a new church, they said he is unrepentant and unfit for leadership. And I completely agree. He does not care about the people that he has hurt in the past. He wants to bury them under the Mars Hill bus, as he previously stated, and he wants to move on. He wants a new group of people to control. And it's terrifying. The fact that abuse happens within the church, it's obvious. We know it. We hear about it all the time. It's a real issue, and it's something that can have lasting impacts on the lives of the people who have to endure it. So, I'm upset. I'm frustrated. I'm done. I'm out. This is the end of the video. This is the end of the content for today. But remember, there will be a bonus video coming out later this week reacting to cringy Christian TikToks, and I feel like it's going to be a good time. So I hope to see you there. Let me know what you thought about all of this information. I know there are a lot of you who watched my last video on Mark Driscoll who had experiences with people similar to him, or even had experiences with Mark Driscoll himself or Mars Hill itself. So I want to hear all of your thoughts. Leave them in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, if you would consider liking this video or subscribing to my channel, that would be incredible. And if you're subscribed already, thank you so much. I am so appreciative of you, and I love being able to just sit here, hang out with you, and talk about whatever. Thank you so much for watching. Please be kind to people, and I will see you in the next one.